If you've been paying attention to the last parts of the series, then you might have noticed a trend. In a lot of cases, when the patient is made to feel belittled, ignored, or uncomfortable, there is also an element of misunderstanding and poor communication. An unwillingness to listen often makes up the foundation on which discrimination is built, even if it isn't based in any conscious ill will. So much of the elements that form the basis of healthcare disparity seem so minor that it's hard to view them under the umbrella of bigotry until you see the outcomes from a bird's eye view of trends. Much of the harm in healthcare, whether based in racism, sexism, ageism, or even burnout of the provider, is based in a decision to not take a complaint seriously, to cut short a physical exam or jump to conclusions about how effective a treatment will be, and often there is no harm done. There is always one patient, though, that suffers unintended consequences. Still, even more of the harm is done by the inherent structure of a healthcare system that is designed to best work, and sometimes only work, for the people that can afford it. Limited clinic hours and sometimes brutal expectations of the healthcare workers to carry out care of dozens of people in a single day forms the basis of a lot of discrimination. When I talked to Elle, she had quite a lot of insight about this. Truly, most of her frustrations were targeted at the business practices of insurance companies and their influence over what providers can and cannot do or prescribe. Quote, I have an epileptic daughter. When she started having seizures, I started realizing how much of our quality of life was affected by what was on black and white paper. Regardless of dealing with doctors and the staff, you still have to really read the paperwork and see how far they were going to go to help you. The medical professionals are doing their jobs, believe it or not. I know it's frustrating for providers because you're getting into a profession that you love to help people, and we're all kind of caught up in this same conundrum system. And the insurance is ahead of it. So we're all kind of trapped by the insurance companies and what they do, end quote. And the sentiment came up more than once in these interviews. In fact, as Z put it, quote, I will say, if you have better insurance, you do get better treatment. I've noticed that. I don't think it matters if you're black or white, end quote. This is great insight that isn't given enough credit in the day-to-day conversations about medicine. For example, I've dealt with more than one chronic pain condition throughout my life, and I'm often first in line to talk about how little medication works for this kind of issue. Sure, a dose of something will make the pain go away for a little, but I at least would either be asleep or too foggy to function. So what has worked for me? Massage has been really helpful, and physical therapy is my best friend at this point. I've even found a lot of benefit in meditation and breathing exercises. And what do all of these things have in common? Depending on your insurance, they may or may not be covered. I've had insurance plans where I'm allowed to go to 20 physical therapy sessions in a year, and each has a copay of $75. I've also had insurance that allows for however many sessions are recommended by the referring provider, which is usually one every week to 2 weeks, or about 26 to 52 a year, and the copay is $20. And they'll even cover a percentage of the cost of massages up to $500. And I'm sure anyone can guess which plan was more expensive. That really is the name of the game. Most insurance companies aren't interested in what is going to help you as a patient. They care about the bottom line. If you can't afford a nicer plan, then you're up a creek. You're left with the options that are available to you. And they often are much less helpful and frequently don't address the real problem. Talking to Elle, a strange thought occurred to me. The next few minutes is a bit of a tangent. This isn't an observation that Elle made. This is just something that I thought was interesting as it occurred to me. I couldn't help but be struck by the parallel between medicine and law enforcement. Both healthcare workers and police officers are in a position of huge power and, theoretically, of respect. Both are meant to be people to provide help to the helpless and to be called upon in the times of greatest needs. Doctors, like police, are often integral to saving lives and pulling people back from unthinkable scenarios. Yet so often, both are also on the forefront of perpetrating the most harmful of racial biases worked into our society. For all the good that they can and have done, does it matter if the same good isn't afforded to everybody equally? I'm somebody who grew up in an ethnically diverse, low-income neighborhood. For essentially my entire life, I've been terrified of police. Even today, I can feel my blood pressure rise when I see flashing lights in my window when they're hardly ever meant for me. In fact, most of the time they aren't even police. If I pass a police officer in the store or on the street, I'm at pains to force myself not to look suspicious. Don't swing my arms, don't be too stiff, don't avoid looking at him, don't stare. Just get away as quickly as possible without drawing attention to yourself. Yet I'm not a criminal. I've never been arrested, I've never really been in trouble. I'm a dedicated student, and I have been since I was a teenager. It hasn't been until I've gotten much older that it occurred to me how wrong on a basic level this is. Why should I be afraid of the mere presence of a police officer? And the truth is, I don't trust them. As others in my life have put it, police officers are not good people. There are good people who can become police officers, but as officers, acting as representatives of a system that is engineered to harm so many people, they cannot be good. When a police officer, in their mind, and to some extent in mine, does the right thing, it's because they themselves are a good person in an inherently disparaging job, doing something that is not supported by the structure of their environment. And it makes me wonder if healthcare workers might fit into a similar category. The very nature of hospital medicine is based around delivering lesser care to people when they can't afford better care. It can't be ignored that a Medicaid patient who has a heart attack is going to end up getting vastly different follow-up care than someone with a gold insurance plan. And this is likely because, for whatever reason, they cannot follow up at the most helpful level. They either can't miss work, they're too far away from the clinic, they can't afford the medication, or they don't have the support. It's not because the doctor decides that they deserve less. This is a flaw of the system functioning. Why isn't there a suitable clinic or hospital closer to where this person lives? Why is the life-saving medication so unrealistically expensive? Granted, doctors themselves have little to do with this. These are systems failings, much in the same way a police officer has no say in that a teenager being out past a local curfew is considered a crime. It doesn't seem odd to me that a patient would be terrified of being at the mercy of physicians in the ER when there's such a lack of trust in a system that makes the news constantly for its mistreatment of those in need. Is it possible that healthcare workers cannot be good people acting in their job because the structure of the environment as dictated by insurance and other factors does not support them doing the right thing? I know there are good people in medicine. There are also very good people I've met who are police officers. Generally, the people who choose to go into either career are compassionate at heart. They want to help others and make a difference in the world. Yet both have to work in systems that are so broken that the result of the professions is often distrust. Then again, maybe it's faith in the systems that's causing the problem. People will always have some level of bias and will always have agendas that serve the most benefit to themselves and their opinions. That is not inherently right or wrong. That is just human nature. But this also breeds systems that are designed to help certain groups over others. It most especially crosses a line when people's trust in the system interferes with thinking for themselves and acting in accordance with their morals. I'm put in mind of war criminals who declare that they have done nothing wrong because, however atrocious their actions were, they were simply following orders. Even if a person knows what they're doing is immoral, they put their faith in a system serving a greater good rather than their own sense of good and bad, the classic to make an omelet you have to break a few eggs sort of mentality. This can be most clearly seen with the discussion I had during one of my courses in medical school. We were supposed to discuss different cases within a group. One of the cases involved a Hispanic family. This shouldn't have been relevant to the case, but it was heavily stressed, so I'll mention it. And their youngest daughter, who was diagnosed with a chronic illness that would need heavy specialist workup with long-term frequent follow-up care. The family was very low income. Both parents worked multiple jobs to sustain their 3 children. It was stated they had difficulty getting time to take their kids even to annual checkups due to the scheduling challenges and lost pay for a day of missed work. My group was almost universally decided. They argued that if these parents loved their child, they would bring her to these expensive specialist appointments, even if it meant losing their jobs that they depended on to keep food on the table or pay their rent. I tried to argue that this was unrealistic for the family. They needed to be set up with programs that could help mediate the cost of the medication or even help with some home care. The rest of my group thought that this would be wasted effort. Their reasoning was that such resources were limited and shouldn't be wasted on these kinds of people. While you might argue that this behavior is terrible, and I would wholeheartedly agree with you, I've had trouble looking these same classmates in the eyes ever since this happened. My classmates were doing exactly what is supported by the medical system. This is systems thinking in all its glory. What is less expensive for the system is not to devote resources when they can't be paid back. If one little girl has lifelong irreversible consequences that could have been avoided, oh well. It was for the greater good. This is in no small part driven by insurance and administrations and what will be paid for. Hospitals and clinics are businesses, after all. There's only so much that people can justify expending, and healthcare workers themselves have to work within the confines of those limits, whether they want to or not. However, all too often, I find opportunities to help the system work better for the people struggling are overlooked. Whether it be ignoring resources that could benefit a family or not disclosing information that could help someone make a better choice for themselves, system policies tend to favor the bottom line. What will help most people? Unfortunately, many of these systems were put into place by groups that, shall we say, weren't diverse. So the policies were developed in the vein of what will help most people like me. And that left a lot of populations and lifestyles without a voice. So what is the solution here? Honestly, can there even be one? Systems are generally put in place to best serve the masses. Criminal justice, child protective services, public schools, healthcare, and many countless dozens of other systems are supposed to do good things for the overwhelming majority of the country. And it would be unfair to ignore the fact that great things come out of these systems every day. Still, how many people slip through the cracks of all of these systems? We can acknowledge there is no one-size-fits-all that can fit everybody. Yet, these systems function at their worst when the human element is removed. When the algorithmic nature of policy is left to look at characteristics while ignoring the life behind them. I mean, this is why courtroom judges are supposed to hear the details of the case and apply the law both as written and as fair given the situation. There's a reason so many villainous organizations in books and movies have the greater good as their slogan. When asked, most individuals will say that the people at the top getting a better view by standing on the backs of those at the bottom is immoral. It's even in the language of the founding documents of the country. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So why then do so many of our systems drop the ball? If most individuals believe that people deserve to be cared for and pursue their best life, how can we be contented to play roles in systems that fail so many every day? One of my favorite movie lines is by Agent K in The First Men in Black. A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it. I would argue that this gets at the heart of a lot of our country's problems. While systems are in place for a reason, we can't forget that they need a human touch to truly work. When we stop looking at people as lists of characteristics and start viewing them as complicated individuals who love, laugh, grow, and learn, systems function better. In other words, you can't just trust systems to function. You have to trust people who think for themselves to make systems function. I know that the tone of this video has kind of come across as scary, but as a patient, one of the best things you can do for yourself is research. Know the laws of medicine. Try and understand your conditions as best as possible. If you're on medication, what is it? What's the dose? How often are you supposed to be taking it? Research foods that might help you manage your thyroid condition or diabetes. Look up easy workouts that you can do at home. Keep a list of this information and bring it with you when you see the doctor. You can skip a lot of questions and get to the real reason you came in. You have a personal obligation in all of this to make the systems work for yourself. Taking simple steps to understand your treatment can go a long way in protecting yourself down the line. Although, disclaimer, don't Google symptoms. Never Google symptoms. If you have a diagnosed condition, research it by name. If you Google symptoms, it will just scare the daylights out of you. Don't do it.